Hello, YouTube. I am Vincent White. I am an employment attorney, and we are answering publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney. That is the Chrysler Building. It's the only nice thing about this office. I, I know I'm not in the city that often, but I am actively offended by the office that I've been given. Actively offended. I'm just kidding. I'm here 2 days a week at most. All right, we have a question from YouTube user DP, who says, "Bravo, thank you." I think the bravo is for me. Question: Can or has a spouse or significant other of a plaintiff who has a claim also added a pain and suffering claim during litigation or at trial? Okay, that is an interesting question, and I actually have an interesting answer. Maybe. I mean, you're going to be the judge of whether or not it's interesting. So, many, many moons ago, and this is very rare, and I'm going to make attorneys angry because now you're going to watch this video and then go back to your attorney and be like, "Hey, my spouse has a claim." And the attorney's going to be like, "No, I'm not doing that." And I want to be upfront about this. Your attorney's probably right. Like, it's probably not a smart claim to bring, and there's reasons, and you should talk about those reasons with your attorney, depending on where you are. Anyways, many, many moons ago, I worked on a case which was for a very talented and vibrant woman who had been treated very, very poorly in the workplace. And she had a spouse. And her spouse, how do I put this? He was a guy, you know? I mean, yeah, this guy, he goes to the bar. He talks to everybody. You know, it's, everybody smiles. He's not being weird. He's just being friendly. He gets the vibe. He gets how to, like, operate and chat, and people like him. People like him a lot. I'm not going to say he's, not Brad Pitt, perhaps. But I'll say he's good enough that he looks good enough. People talk to him, and they want to hear what he has to say, right? Also, a very likable guy. I like the guy a great deal. He's great stories. I like him too, right? So, anyways, he's sitting, watching his spouse go through a very difficult trial, a very long trial. And this is early in my career, and I'm watching the jurors, as one does. It's important. Well, I noticed one of the jurors is watching behind me. Well, who's sitting behind me? But lo and behold, jovial spouse, hubby, sitting behind me, and there's some interplay, little bit of let's call it eye contact. I don't want to make it more than it was, but perhaps a little flirtation of the eyes. And it just so happened that before this case had come to me, some rogue attorney had thrown in something called a loss of consortium claim, arguing that the plaintiff had been so horribly harmed that she was no longer able to engage in relations with her spouse. That is the nature. That's basically the gist of the loss of consortium claim. It's a claim for the spouse saying that you hurt my spouse so much, you harmed my spouse so much that we cannot be as husband and wife together anymore. And let me be clear. I'm using these terms. I don't care about these labels, husband and wife. This is just, we're using the terms from the law as it existed at the time. So that claim's in the mix. It didn't get dismissed. It got passed, I believe, both a motion to dismiss and a summary judgment motion, if I recall correctly. And there was some medical treatment and some testimony tied to this idea of the loss of consortium. And a lot of what we might call fuckery went on during this trial. There was a very experienced defense counsel, and I was not a very experienced plaintiff's counsel at the time, and that very experienced defense counsel thought he was the man. and there was some witnesses who got aggressive, and like there was a physical altercation in the court. This is like a wild story, right? I'm keeping everything very vague because I don't want to dredge up anything in anyone's past, right? There it goes for everybody. Let sleeping cases lie. The result was the result, and I was very pleased with the result. And part of the result was that there had been so much nonsense that went on in the case. The jury hated defense counsel, and the jury hated the defendants to some extent. And so I, penguin of a baby attorney that I was, wobbling around doing my best, it was a win, right? We got ourselves a win, and it wasn't all me, obviously. And a big part of the win was that they just hated the defendants because of the way they behaved during the trial. And perhaps an additional kind of cherry on top of the win was that the loss of consortium claim for the spouse was also in fact granted. Now, was that perhaps because there was a juror who had a certain fondness for that spouse? I don't know. They're not going to tell me that. But, it wouldn't have surprised me. And I'm not in any way insinuating that anything went on. Like, there's nothing inappropriate, just some eye contact, a little bit more than might have gone on in a bar. Like, two people in a bar, and they're wondering, should I talk to you? And maybe somebody at the bar is like, you should, and that's that level of eye contact. Let's bump it up like 2 levels beyond that. That's what we're talking about here, okay? We're talking about more than like 3 1-second glances. We're talking about like a week of eye contact whenever somebody gets bored during the course of like a 10-day trial. It's a lot. So anyways, yeah. So the loss of consortium claim was granted, and significant dollar figures were even attached to that. That's a wild result. That surprised everyone. Like, the judge was like, huh, really? Oh, I mean, that's the law. I guess, jury, you have the power to do that. Okay. I mean, I remember being like, huh, that's pretty amazing. It was wild, and I mean, the fact that we won the case was not wild. It was a good case, but that one specific claim. So, DP, to answer your question, yeah, in certain situations, but there's going to be a lot to it, and you need to have a really in-depth conversation with your attorney about if it's appropriate in your situation and what's viable and what's not viable in your jurisdiction, because, talk to your local counsel. I can't answer questions about state law where you are, and a loss of consortium claim is generally going to be state law, not federal law. It's not going to fall under the, Title VII, the ADA. The federal laws that govern discrimination. It's going to be something else, right? Often, it's not even really written into the law. It's just something that comes up in case law over time when you're litigating cases over the past 200 years, wherever you are. So, check with your local counsel. But to answer your question as to if the spouse of a plaintiff can have a claim for pain and suffering, the answer is yeah, sort of, in a way, depending on where you are and in certain situations. And if you paper everything really well and spend a lot of time prepping it and get really lucky, yes. I hope this was helpful. If it was, like and subscribe. It helps me to help more people just like you. And I hope this story was kind of funny. I mean, to me it's funny, but also I might have done a really bad job telling it because it's like, it's not late at night, but I want to go home. Take care.